sorry guys. It's 1:30, so we're like very disciplined to staying on time. So welcome everyone to our CodeX group meeting. We have two presentations today. We have Amelie Sophie Wawrowski, the CEO of Formally, here with us at Stanford. And then we have Markus Schmidt, the CEO of CopyTrack, who's joining us remotely. And we're going to get started in just a little bit, but I wanted to see if anyone had any news to share, any updates, any needs, anything here in the group, anyone online. If you want online, if you want us to hear you, have to unmute yourself or use the chat function. Can you hear us online? Can you give us a sign?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Cool.
Cool. Hey, we do have one thing, and Ruben can tell you. We just launched a podcast, Our Data, associated with RegTrax, part of the project of the blockchain group at CodeX. So, and we just had our first launch interview with Stephen Keynes, which is really worth listening to. It's doing great.
All right, our very own Stephen Keynes.
Indeed.
Okay, and yeah, thank you, Michael. All right, so where can we find the podcast? Oh, Michael, we can't hear.
The file is hosted on SoundCloud, but if you go to the RegTrax website, on the CodeX website, you can find it under latest media.
Okay,
and the
cool.
link is there.
All right, super. That's exciting.
Oh,
yeah. So everyone is.
Well, I think you're presenting at the computational policy.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
That's me.
That's you.
Yeah, I'm also presenting at the computational policy lab on Monday. So Shradgo group, so I'm excited for that.
Cool, excellent. So the podcast is required reading or listening for all CodeX friends. And yeah, anyone else, anything
Roland?
to share? Yeah,
if
yeah.
Okay,
go ahead, Lance.
Hello to the group.
Yeah, please do.
So I wanted to introduce myself to the group. I'm Dr. Lance Elliott, formerly professor at USC, joint appointment in computer science and business, where I also ran an AI research lab, and we did a lot of work with the law school, so I have a keen interest in that area. I've recently moved up here, just recently I was with a venture capital firm. I'm now an angel investor, and I also serve as a judge of a lot of pitch competitions. And then I also have a very popular column in Forbes and also AI Trends on AI that's amassed over 1 million views. So I met Roland, and he was kind enough to invite me to come to these meetings. Thank you for the generosity in doing so. And if there's anything I can do to aid anyone that's here or that's on the phone, I'm happy to do so.
That's great. Thanks, Lance. Great to have you. So, and it's always great to have new friends of the center, and there's always lots of startup entrepreneurs here who might want to learn how to perfect a pitch or even pitch you for investment.
Sure.
So,
absolutely.
and
have an introduction. I'm actually a law graduate from here. I graduated like 2 years ago, and now I joined a venture capital firm in Palo Alto. So I only basically focus on investment in legal tech and fintech. So we basically do some investments related to like AI-enabled legal companies and also like blockchain-enabled.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you, Charles. All right. Well, cool. So if there's no more announcements, let's turn it over to Amelie.
Yeah. Hi.
And Formally. All right.
Yeah. I'm Amelie. I'm the CEO at Formally. I'm also a student here in international policy, so I work on tech policy. So I have sort of a dual appointment right now. So we simplify immigration forms because they are currently really hard. And I'm sure a lot of you are aware that there is a crisis in asylum and immigration in the U.S. USCIS, which is the organization that receives these applications, receives around 6 million every day. Not every day, sorry, every year. Every day is rough. It's rough enough, so there's a really large backlog. There's actually 100% backlog right now, which means they can only process half as many applications as they would need to in order to not have people wait for a long time. Global crisis is a little larger. In 2015, 65 million people were forcibly displaced. So those are refugees and asylum seekers, but that trend is just increasing, and you can imagine how with climate change and other like push factors, people are going to be increasingly displaced, and this is an increasingly large problem. So I like to start when I'm in the U.S. I like to give this number from 2017 when the U.S. was intended to admit 110,000 asylum seekers. That was sort of their self-selected threshold. This was not imposed by anybody, this was self-selected. But of that 110,000 capacity, they only actually admitted 45,000. And we sort of started investigating why that is, and it turns out a lot of it is due to really poor quality of applications and people just making a lot of mistakes on like forms and just having generally poor quality of their applications. What a lot of people don't know is that if you're an asylum seeker looking to get asylum in the US, the very first step is called the I-589, the application for asylum and for withholding of removal, which is quite a mouthful even for an attorney. So let's take a look at this form. It's around 12 pages long, 400 fields, so it's a pretty large document, and very often there are many pages of supplements in addition that attorneys have to fill out in order to really file for asylum. It's worth noting that these applications are currently only available in English, but let's take a look at what this form actually looks like and what it actually says. So this is the very first page, but let's actually look at the very first question on the very first page. It says, check this box if you also want to apply for withholding of removal under Convention Against Torture. Now this is a tough question to answer even for most people who have legal training, right? Let's see if it gets better. Next one is your alien registration number, then your US Social Security number, and then your USCIS online account number, all of which most asylum seekers typically would not have if they're applying for asylum. So where can people turn for help with these forms? Luckily, there's some really great NGOs and lawyers that are helping people fill out these forms. Unfortunately, they're really overworked, lots of paper to fill out. They don't speak all the languages necessary to support everyone, and they're also often lacking funding to help people. And all of these things combined right now mean that 86% of asylum seekers have no legal representation in the US, which makes them about 5 times more likely to be denied, regardless of how valid their claim is. So I like to pause here because that's really the core problem we're trying to solve. 86% have no legal representation, making them 5 times more likely to be denied. So that's why we built Formally. So what's Formally? We are a legal tech startup, and we
form ally.
I know, it's a pun, right? It's great. As a non-native speaker of English, I love puns. I think they're really great. So we're taking people through the questions, one form at a time, asking them questions that they know the answer to first, like, what is your name? Which right now is field 5 instead of field 1, right? So we're rearranging the form flow to make it more intuitive, and we also provide context so that people can understand what the question is really getting at. To contextualize this, let's look at question number 24. It says, are you fluent in English? Pretty innocuous, right? You're like, well, kind of, sort of, maybe, I don't know. Maybe they want me to say I'm fluent in English. Maybe that helps my chances of getting asylum. When you say that you're fluent in English, however, you are forfeiting your right to have an interpreter present during your court proceedings. So formally make sure that you're aware of the potential consequences of checking that. Mind you, we're not giving legal advice. This is part of the USCIS instructions. We've just digested them and made them more understandable for people so that they can get the right context for the right question. And for people who don't speak English, we support Arabic, Spanish, and Mandarin, and so that people can fill out their form in whatever language they feel most comfortable in. We use a translation API to translate answers back, which means that when they do have an interpreter helping them, they can fix the translation, which takes much less time, or they can just submit it as is, because there's actually no penalty of submitting something wrong, but we're really encouraging, and I'll talk about this, and working really hard to actually connect people with the right resources so they can find somebody who can interpret it and somebody who can give them legal advice, because we can do that. So if a very well-trained attorney, let's say he's an immigration attorney, she's an immigration attorney, and they fill out exclusively I-589s and they work exclusively on asylum applications, the minimum time it takes them to fill out an asylum application with a client is typically 4 hours. And if they have any children or any other family members right now, they're manually transcribing the application. So it sometimes takes a couple of weeks when they're really working with the client. Also, clients come in unprepared, they don't really know what they need to bring, so there's a lot of confusion in this process, and the clients and the attorneys are really stressed. When the applicant takes Formally home and does most of the filling out of the form outside of the appointment time, we've been able to, on average, reduce that time to about an hour. And we really love that Formally saves attorney time, but we are also aware that just taking people through an accessible form flow that they can understand, where they can take their time, means that they know better what's going on, they feel less helpless, and they gain a lot of agency over their own case and file. And they can ask better questions and represent themselves better in court. The way we work is we're a B2B2C company, so asylum seekers don't actually pay or use informally. Instead, we sell our software to organizations, usually immigrant rights organizations, who then provide formally free of cost to their clients or applicants. And there are a couple of reasons we do this. We actually pretend to be a directly to consumer company. We say, hey, you can either get this shiny software for a lot of money or choose to reach out to one of our partner organizations, and we're thereby financially incentivizing people to seek help, because we know that people who are seeking asylum really should have an attorney. So we're sort of referring people to resources that can actually help them. We charge an average mid-sized organization that we work with, they process around 800 asylum applications. If they have a staff attorney, around 15 attorneys on staff, this comes to about $2 to $3 per case, which is really extremely affordable, and also an immigration attorney's time is roughly $600 an hour. Sometimes a lot more than that, sometimes a little less than that. We care a lot about security, so the way we handle our data is that we don't handle it. It's encrypted, including to us, which we find is the only ethical way to hold sensitive information like that. So the client holds a password that they can share with their attorney, but we don't actually have access to our own databases, which means that we can build a secure digital passport for individuals who have to input really sensitive information. And if we get subpoenaed by the U.S. government, we unfortunately don't have our data, which is, I think, the only safe way to have it. This is for the business people out here. Haha, it's a big market. I don't have to tell you guys, but the legal tech market in the U.S. is estimated to be extremely large, $437 billion. Immigration and legal tech market in the EU and China is estimated to be around $138 billion, and the U.S. immigration legal tech market is $9.4 billion. It's worth noting that investment in legal tech grew by 713% in 2018. I don't have to tell you guys this because you're clearly already interested in legal tech, but it's a trend worth noting. This is interesting. I don't know. People sometimes like these slides, sometimes they don't. But the thing that I'd like to point out is that Formally is completely free to users. And yes, that we're, right now, the only competitors that we have, Boundless, is doing an amazing job, but exclusively for citizenship applications. So there's nobody out there who's really trying to build something that helps people fill out forms beyond the asylum application. So right now we have a bundle of forms that includes employment authorizations, change of address forms, fee waivers, and you can imagine how as we build out this product, we're really trying to have people never fill out information twice so that they can actually seamlessly navigate bureaucracy wherever they go. This is my team. They're not all at Stanford. Some of them are in, Noah's up in San Francisco, so it's Ben, and Matt, Michelle, and Diane are over in Boston and currently working remotely. They're really great. We have some great partners and mentors that are supporting us and really excited to use our software, and they're the organizations that are in beta with us right now. So that's it.
Cool, thank you. Yeah. Okay, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions. So
yeah.
Please, any questions?
So asylum only or full immigration?
So right now we're focused on asylum and employment-based immigration. We're building out a H-1B and an O-1 suite right now.
Yeah, makes sense.
But it's
natural adjacencies. Are these for people who are in this country and seeking asylum, or people who are in other countries who might be seeking asylum?
So this question just got more complicated, right? Because a lot of people, a lot of asylum seekers are seeking MPP, so we're working with organizations at the border, which is why we're forming these partnerships. I was telling them earlier that I just was down at the border in Tijuana, working with an organization that provides pro se help for people who fall under the MPP, which is the Remain in Mexico policy. So we're helping them streamline their processes too. Usually you can only apply for asylum when you're in the U.S., but that just changed.
Right.
So yeah, we're working with whatever needs to happen. Usually, so the reason we're not a web app is because people could fill out their forms formally when they're abroad, and we don't want to be an app because we don't want a Border Patrol official to have any data locally stored that they could access, and also we don't want it to be used as evidence that they were intending to stay in the U.S., which sometimes could lead to complications at the port of entry. So we're just trying to be really thoughtful about how we hold that data. So,
Sorry about that one. How many people are, yeah, so sorry, first question. You said it's free for the end user. Now, of course, you're doing B2B to C. If there's no intermediate B, can the C use it, or is that not possible?
so yeah, so a lot of time what happens is that organizations actually have limited capacity, despite the fact that we're trying to do capacity building for organizations. They still have limited capacity. They can't take on everyone's case and can't help everyone in the clinic. So what happens a lot is that organizations give out access codes and count that as indirect help in their reports, which helps them get more.
It still has to come through an intermediate B.
Yes, right now it does. We pretend it doesn't because we're really trying to push people, and we're trying to. There's a lot of reasons that we pretend to be directly to consumers. One is like the consumer friendliness, and also so people can find it online as a potential way to get help. The other way is just like the perceived value and the perceived security of a free versus non-free software.
Down to two more.
Please do, yeah.
How many people or companies are using it now? What's the I know it's market sizes, but what does your share look like, right? Just today.
So it's hard to say how many individuals are using it because we don't have analytics turned on. So the way we know is we talk to our organization partners who we're like co-building this with. We have about 30 organizations.
About 30, okay.
It's pretty exciting.
Final question for me is this.
Yeah, and this is still in beta. So
you have four languages that you translate into: Spanish, Mandarin, and.
Correct.
We have 6 languages actually.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Okay, we mentioned those at any rate. So I was wondering distribution over those languages. A lot of Spanish, maybe, but I don't know how many Mandarin. Maybe there are a lot there too. I'm just trying to figure out why those choices.
So we just took the official UN languages. I happen to speak all of those, so I just happen to be able to do those and get some help with the translations for those languages. There's human-generated translations. We also have computer-generated translations for any other language that Google Translate supports. But yeah, of course, Spanish is the most important one for asylum seekers, but for business immigration, you can see how Hindi or Mandarin might become more important. So we'll expand languages as we expand our repertoire. Right now, definitely the Spanish is.
So I was wondering, because it's asylum and Mandarin, that just didn't strike me as being.
Yeah, it's just an example of a language that we currently support, but like I said, it'll be associated with the suite of immigration forms that we're building.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Carl Branting.
Hey, Emily, sorry to interrupt. This is Susan. I know you have to run pretty soon, and we've got some questions online in the chat. If you have a moment to drop your email into the chat.
Yeah. I don't actually know how to do that. That's Amelie, A-M-E.
I will do it for you then. But if you guys want, we can take a few questions from the chat.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. Bruce has a question. Bruce, do you want to go ahead?
Thanks, Susan. This is great. I'm just wondering, since the problem you set out to solve is the bottleneck of the government's ability to process these applications, how are you B2G? How are you giving a GovTech solution here, if at all?
So some governments have reached out to us, including the Austrian government that I worked for a while, so they're really interested in buying the software as a government. For them, it's really exciting because it reduces error, because people don't check the wrong boxes. A lot of times forms get rejected because they forget to put NA in it. So tech is really good at being very consistent and precise about filling out NA into every form they need. I don't anticipate the U.S. government buying this software, to be very honest with you. I think there's a reason these forms are hard. I think there's a reason that they're not available in Spanish. But if the U.S. government wanted to buy our software, we'd be extremely happy to help them solve their bottleneck. The only way we're solving the bottleneck right now is just by increasing accuracy in the form filling.
Cool. So Carl Branting had a question too. He said, how do you validate the legal knowledge implemented in the system?
With all our amazing partners, that's another reason to work with immigration attorneys and organizations, is that we work with them, right? In our beta, we're going back and forth, we're going over the content, they're helping us navigate the line, which what is legal advice versus what is general context that we can provide for the questions. And a lot of it is just from the USCIS instructions, which is a 8-point font, 40-page document that is not very accessible to most people, but that we can parse through and just get really good general context from.
So I saw that. So you also have the role of head of data analytics in the company. How are you planning to use the data? I mean, is this what are the models you have in mind there?
Yeah. So Michelle does a lot of things. She does user testing as well. Honestly, it's mostly like back-end engineering. So she works with Ben on like our like back-end structure a lot. We're curious about like using data maybe in countries that are less hostile for asylum seekers right now, but honestly right now we're not doing a lot with the analytical part. She was mostly helping with user
You don't have
testing.
any data at the moment, right? Because you don't.
I mean, we have data from like what the organizations report back to us, but we don't have data that was collected through like Google Analytics thrown over our software. We have like a little bit of data. We like know what people click on and like where people linger on the like screen, but we don't have location data. We don't have identifying data. So like there's a lot of data that we don't have.
Roland, I have some questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Lance.
Mike, similar to your questions, so thank you for asking your questions. They were similar. One is the structure of the entity itself a nonprofit? The reason I ask, I serve on the board of the Social Enterprise Lab at USC, where we offer a master's and a bachelor's degree in social entrepreneurship. And if you come through as a nonprofit for a mission of this nature, the odds are, in terms of getting investment from foundations and other groups, would be enhanced. What is the structure of the company itself?
So we're not a nonprofit. We tried. It's a terrible idea for us to be a nonprofit because software that is built by nonprofits is either terrible or needs to have like a lot of upfront funding in order to be like well designed and good and also iterated upon and have the support necessary. So I think there's a fundamental belief that asylum seekers deserve great software and also that there is the opportunity to subsidize the asylum suite completely through things like business immigration and other B2B operations. We don't really want to be at the mercy of foundations and the fact that asylum is trendy right now but might not be as soon there is, for instance, an administration change, right? Or the other thing, quite honestly, is that we're so scrappy that we can't really have foundation money that says, this has a red bow on it that is exclusively for buying lunches. And we're like, well, we really need to pay for servers and not lunches. So the flexibility. The last thing is the corporate veil that helps us, like be safer for our clients. Corporations enjoy many more rights than nonprofits do a lot of the time. So it was just generally advised for us to do that. That being said, plans to make asylum like our CSR department or like even make that part a nonprofit but like supported by a corporate entity. Yeah, anyways, this is a long one answer, but I've thought about this a lot. And yeah, we don't really want to be reliant, like we don't want to put people who really need these services at the mercy of like a foundation. And also from like the point of resources internally, we think that this is scalable and investable because it has this attractive like B2B structure that is so expandable into markets that like have a lot of money. Like Google spends $20K per H-1B application right now. You could see how even a company that tries to streamline their processes or is thinking about hiring international talent does not want to spend that much money because to like significantly reduce the spend and increase the care for the people they're serving.
Another quick question would be too, so from an intellectual property rights perspective, since this is based on a government-provided form, it would seem unlikely you could go after that angle for any kind of intellectual IP. Perhaps maybe on the nature of the software development, I'm not sure. And this would allow you, mention your competitors before, and that to you, what difference is that yours is free and so on. But is there any way to protect what you have to try to act as a barrier to those competitors? Any thoughts on, have you explored that at all?
Yeah, can I give you the really blunt answer that is just the truth out there is that it's really, really hard to get the trust of nonprofits and of attorneys in general. And the reason we are able to do that is because we have been partnering with them for a long time. We've been building the software with them. There's a very low likelihood that people, like attorneys, don't want to change software once they're doing it. We're working with all the major nonprofit like actors in this space. So I think there's just like the sheer amount of trust that we've been able to gain through doing that and through doing this like hard work in asylum first, I think is going to make it very, very unlikely that anybody's going to switch rapidly because attorneys are not the people who switch fast. We're not B2C. The last thing is the only avenue for IP that we could like potentially pursue is like on elliptical curve encryption, which is just a fancy encryption thing that we might work on. But honestly, just to give you as an investor and you as a group my real answer, the competitive mode is 100% the trust that like legal tech companies fail to gain usually.
There's questions in the chat, if I may just like kind of read them out quickly. So one is more a comment. That's Michael saying, great point on the lack of funding for software development with nonprofits. remains a very big barrier for NGOs and nonprofits to leverage technology. Carl had a follow-up question on, does the context-aware interface reflect a cognitive task analysis or a more informal process?
You mean the context that we provide for the questions themselves?
Yeah, the interactive interface. So so by the way, great work. Really enjoyed your presentation. But one of the when you're structuring an interactive interface, one of the issues is that the structure should be, you could think of it as optimizing something, and one of them, it might be fidelity to the behavior of an attorney, or perhaps minimizing the number of questions, or reducing the number of errors, or perhaps faithfully reflecting the cognitive model of the user. And I'm just wondering if you had any of those criteria in mind, or whether it was a more informal process.
So the criteria we have is extreme accessibility, because we work with people who have limited tech literacy. So we're designing about at the level of WhatsApp, which is what most of our users are able to do. Yeah, this sounds crazy, right? But like, we're thinking about how to make an extremely complicated process as easy as possible. So we actually just started building like A to Z flows that take them through the entire application process. And like, we've been like minimizing everything as much as possible. So we're definitely designing for ease of use, because that's really where the value added is for the attorneys, right? They will, if they're used formally, very likely have somebody checking it with them. So the key is that they feel like they can do it themselves, that they understand everything, that buttons look like buttons, that people who don't have like the fine motor skills that you have can still type on it. It's like a lot of, like, we have drop shadows on our buttons. Like, I know flat designs are hot, but like, is it clickable? Is it easy to use? Can you log out quickly? If you're worried that you're, like, somebody's coming to like look at your screen or something, right? So we're really optimizing for accessibility and user design.
But it's through, there's not a formal usability analysis, but rather it's just sort of best practices.
There's some best practices, and there's definitely some user testing we've conducted where like we've just watched users like use it and see, can you go through this by yourself, and given people like I-589s as a form as is, and seeing if like when they give up versus like when they give up informally, which has been significantly later.
So Scott, okay, thanks. So Scott had a question where he's asking, by way of comparison, do you, Amelie, see any precedents emerging in countries in the EU, for example, for a single identification number for such issues as asylum, and with regards to the 3 numbers required on the application you showed, which could come to inform such a process, and regarding countries spoken by the languages you support?
Yeah, so this is a long question. I do a lot of research in immigration policy, and I have a lot of thoughts on the European refugee/asylum system, which is completely fragmented, and because of the Dublin Convention forces people to apply in whatever like country they first arrive, and also means that each country has a separate asylum process right now. So there is a lot of potential, and we love the idea of streamlining that process. Like, I tried to find the Greek asylum application online, and I couldn't do it. That's an indicator of something really bad. So yeah, definitely would love to work. I've worked in the Middle East a lot, so trying to work in refugee camps as well. I've worked in Jordan and Lebanon. So I've been like in this space for a long time, and I have a lot of policy thoughts. I don't think formally is tackling that right now, but we'd love to like move to Europe and then work on streamlining a process like that.
Cool. All right, well, great. So we're pretty much at 2 o'clock already, and I want to turn it over to Marcus. But yeah, so if you have more questions for Amelie, please send her an email. The email is in the chat. Please join me in thanking Amelie for her great presentation. Wishing you very, very much luck for your next steps. So please keep us posted. Are you willing to share your slides?
Yeah, I can send them to you. Thank you.
Yeah, this is being recorded, and we hope to have it up on the CodeX playlist on YouTube, so people can find it there as well.
Thank you.
Amelie, do you mind unsharing your screen at the moment?
Yep, it's being shared right now.
Okay, thank you so much. Fantastic presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amelie.
I'm going to stop sharing.
And So let's turn it over to Marcus now. Marcus, just by your name, it sounds like you're joining us from Germany, but where are you joining us from?
No, I'm actually joining you from Berlin. Hi.
There you go. All right, that's
Nailed it.
that's close enough. Okay. All right. So Marcus is the CEO of CopyTrack, and yeah, we're excited to learn about what you're up to.
Okay. Well, yeah, just a quick introduction about myself. As you can see, I'm pretty much around in the startup and in the entrepreneur scene for a few years. Before I started CopyTrack, I have already worked in the legal tech area, in the area of flight cancellations and delays, which is an issue in Germany, sorry, in the EU, because you are getting some refunds for that. After that, I thought about, hey, what kind of legal trouble and problems and infringements exist, which have a much bigger market than that. And then the images came into my mind, and all these copyright infringements. So this was, let's say, the start of CopyTrack. I'll share my screen now. Just give me a quick, can you see that?
Yes.
Good. So I have prepared 5-6 slides, and I want to introduce you to the market, to our solution, and the technology behind. So this is not working. Oh yeah, okay. It's, as I said, a pretty big market. What we are facing is that there are around 3 billion images which are shared or uploaded every day. And that's an enormous amount of images. And then if you know that about 80 to 85% of these images are actually used without a valid license, then you can imagine how big the legal problem is. We have assumed a market share of 1%, but it's if you look at it, it would still be some 25 million images per day that you would have to track down. So it's actually an endless market. And as you can see on the left side, the market is also growing each year. Of course, the biggest problem we have is social media, blogs, and websites. So in social media, it's let's say hard to track, and but on websites which are not private, it's very easy for us to track these images. So the solution, how does it work? What we offer is a service which is pointing at professional photographers and amateur photographers, illustrators, publishers, e-commerce companies, and news agencies, image agencies. All these groups own rights on images, and our service is pretty easy to use for them. You simply go to our website, you sign up within 30 seconds. There's no strings attached. The profile is free. Then you upload your images or your portfolios. You can also segment them into folders. And the second you upload them, our engine is already starting the search. And all the images of our clients are completely searched every 2 weeks. So you can also be sure that if a new website pops up that uses your images, we'll find it. What happens is that after the search, of course, the results might not be as clear. We have to detect whether it's and how big the similarity to your original image is. Therefore, we have developed an image matching AI, which also can work with flipped images, mirrored images, color changes, cropped images, collages, everything. We'll still find it. Then we deliver back these hits to our customers, our clients, and they can then decide whether it's used illegally or not. If it's illegal, they can simply submit a case to us. Then we start a four-step legal process. The first one is a quite friendly letter or email that we send in 13 languages, which says, hey, you are using an image of our client and we cannot detect a valid license. Please provide one. If not, then you have now the opportunity to have a subsequent license. So either they can, and it's all automatic, it's a portal where they can upload the proof of license, or they can immediately purchase the license, or let's say it's almost the same amount, just slightly higher than they would usually buy the license. If all this doesn't work, we have a commercial collection process afterwards. If this doesn't work, it goes to our lawyers network, where we have a letter sent by the lawyer first, and then later on, we would go to court. All this depending worldwide in all countries on the value of the claim and of course, the legislation in these countries, whether it's worth it going to court or not. If you look at it, worldwide, we do 80% of our business with about 16 countries. So you see, we can quite well focus on where to work. How does it work? The first part is the technology part, which is this search and matching technology. We have a cloud-based high performance crawler, which currently crawls about 5,000 websites per second and collects those images to compare them. It's a linear scalable system. So it's if we want to have more websites per second, it's not a problem. The whole system is provided with an API. So even if somebody wants to implement it into their service, it's not a problem. Then the image matching AI is also linear scalable. It's based, and right now we are handling a portfolio of 65 million client images. The legal part I just explained. I think I don't have to go into more depth at this point. I mean, there is some nice, let's say, benefits on that side. We have an automatic collection of evidence of the use period and so on, and also on the hits that we show to our clients. Actually, our system learns from the past 150,000 claims, which claims will be successful or likely to be successful and which are not. So we actually tend to show the more successful claims, of course, to our clients before they work on the less successful. So that's the process overall. We have the crawling here, then we have the image matching. We are running currently a 7 terabyte data cluster. We also have a sister company that provides a global copyright register, blockchain based, that uses our monitoring. Then we have the automatic collection of evidence. We have the compensation, the settlement portal, and then here in the end, we have the legal process. Just to give you some figures about CopyTrack and its size, right now we have, that's already a bit old, we have some 27,000 clients worldwide. We are currently growing between 800 and 1,000 new clients per month. And our clients are from 190 different countries. The cases we so far solved and settled, they were from over 100 countries. Right now we have 150,000 claims, and we are growing between 5 and 7,000, 8,000 claims per month. To give you an idea on how valuable a claim is, it's usually an average of 330 euros, which is pretty much 300, maybe 350 or 370 US dollars. There's one exception, and that's the US. Because, as you know, the US goes crazy when it comes to suing people. That's really a big exception compared to the rest of the world. So we hand over the cases with 330 euros, and our attorneys in the US turn it into regularly into 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 US dollars of settlement. But that's really exceptional worldwide. We're also very successful in Japan. Just to give you an idea of the cultural differences we face. So in Japan, if we start the post-licensing process, it's super successful because they have a very, let's say, high awareness of doing something wrong, and they want to fix it. So this is a way for them to keep their face, fix it, and it's done. If we do the same in the US, we are almost not successful with the post-licensing because everybody says, that's scam, no, I don't pay. So we have to go the legal process almost all the time. And so this way, each country has a completely different specialties, and it's on one hand quite interesting to learn about that. On the other hand, of course, it makes it very complex to run such enforcement on a global basis. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I'll stop sharing, and yeah, you're welcome to ask questions.
Great, Mike.
I don't know how much you can reveal about the strengths or weaknesses of your matching algorithm, but I'm very curious about that. It's a difficult computational process, and so you did mention some things like clipping and various transformations. You know, finding that the sub-image is shared in a larger image is very difficult. Going through different compression, different formats, JPEG, PNG, GIFs, different compression levels will change the digital structure of the document. Is there some limit? You know, can you characterize how close a match is? What cases are easy? What cases are very hard for you? Cases that you can't capture at the moment?
Well, the thing is, of course, if an image is too small, we have a hard time to match it. Like thumbnails, we cannot detect because that's too small. We prefer to have images of our clients, at least, which are around optimum 800 pixels or 900 pixels on the longest side. That's the, let's say, where we get the best results. We can also, of course, change the accuracy of the term. And for example, it's an amazing example that we had. Somebody took a photography, and painted an oil paint image. But this guy copied this photograph so well, even with every little sunbeam and everything, that our engine found it. So on the other hand, of course, if you have red carpet images, for example, and you have the red carpet, you have the 2 Oscars there, and in the middle there's a little Angelina Jolie, then in the beginning, it happened that we found this image, but we also found the image with Brad Pitt, because all the rest was the same. It was red carpet, 2 big Oscars, and a little person in the middle. but we changed that, and now we're even able to have a lot of similarities, but even if there's a small difference, we are able to distinguish that.
Is this a proprietary matching algorithm, or are you using something from the literature, research literature?
No, that's our development.
Okay, great. The only other question I have for you is, you mentioned 3 billion images, 3 billion per day, 3 million per day? I can't remember what the total was.
Billion.
3 billion images per day. Of course, many of those are Facebook images or Instagram images, which nobody really cares about. And so just curious if you have a scope of the size of the market of cases where people do care and they want to enforce their copyrights. Do you have any sense of that proportion?
Well, it's similarly endless, because think of all the websites, think of all the e-commerce shops. Just this alone is a market which is sheer endless.
Yeah, but maybe nobody cares. I mean, I don't care if somebody copies my image. Some people do, some people don't. I'm talking about the people like Getty Images and others who really care because they make their money on their images, and they want to make sure that nobody's copying them. So I'm trying to figure out what proportion of that is actually attributable to folks who are commercial image providers.
Oh, yeah,
I think you said your target customers are like professional photographers, right? Like how?
We have different groups. We have professional photographers, which is per se the biggest number, absolutely. But we also have image agencies, obviously, which have a higher volume. We have e-commerce shops, which have big losses of the products and images they do, and then others steal it and sell the same products. We have news agencies. That's our client.
So do you have a sense of what the size of that market is, of that set of images, as opposed to the total number of images generated per day?
Well, to be honest, we try to figure out how many professional photographers there are, but there is no real number. So our clients is from amateur to professional, and as I said, right now we have a sign up of 1,000 new clients per month. We haven't reached a low, let's say, where we would say, okay, now we have a saturation.
And Marcus, do you bring the enforcement actions then, or do you have a network of lawyers around you who then bring enforcement actions if one of the infringers is not willing to settle?
Well, the process of the post licensing, we have a settlement portal which is 100% automated. This is inside our company. The commercial collection is also, let's say, within our company. Only when it comes to the legal enforcement, then we have our legal partners around the world.
I see. Okay, cool. There's another question over there.
So actually, it's a follow-up question. So for those, you have to enforce, for example, like at court. So you have to work with the lawyers, right? So what's their fee structure, or what's the cost for them to enforce those rights? Because I think for example, you said that the settlement payment is usually like several hundred euros or $3,000 US, right? But for lawyers, if they go to court, maybe maybe the result won't be much higher than that. But what about if the cost is higher than that? Maybe they won't take it, right?
Good question. Let's quickly talk about the fee structure. So the use of our system is totally free for our clients. We have a pure success-based fee, which is 30% in the post-licensing process, and which is 45% after deducting the costs in the legal process. All our legal partners, we have agreements where they were commission-based, either that, or we have a fixed cost structure, and if it's that, then we only hand over cases of a certain value. And this way we can actually almost never have a negative result.
Yeah, Ruben had one too, and then Yulan. You had a question, Ruben.
Yeah, so I have to imagine with something like this, when you're searching the internet, that one of the big challenges is not just determining, contact information, but figuring out what jurisdiction they're in, So when you say that you have, I think it was 150,000 claims, are those, is that 150,000 actionable claims? And if not, what percentage of those claims are actually actionable where you have an identified party that you can deal with?
No, that's where we have identified parties. So this is also why our system is learning out of all these cases continuously, because we already know, for example, that this is a website with user-generated content. Doesn't make much sense to go after them. This is a website where the owner is bankrupt. Doesn't make sense to have another case and that stuff.
Right. So then, what percentage of those 150,000? What percentage of that is the total number of claims that you're able to identify?
That I didn't understand.
Oh, so if that's the number of actionable claims that you have, there must be a set of claims where you can't identify the other party because it's obscured by the DNS provider or something.
We distinguish. So we distinguish hits, which is actually the use, or let's say, no, this is where we found the image. These are millions every day, which we distribute to our customers. The customers then decide whether it's illegal or not. And if we talk about claims, it's actually where we have a hit, where the client says, oh, this is illegal, and where we have also the opponent's contact data. So that's already the last step.
So the 150,000 is basically the actionable claim.
Yeah.
So those are the good claim where you have the defendant already, or the infringer already, and you know that your client wants to go after them.
Yeah.
Actually. Okay. Lance?
Yeah. So you mentioned that your software is of a proprietary nature, kind of homegrown, and in the image analysis space, there are a slew of patents. And oftentimes what happens is someone develops such software, doesn't realize that they've actually infringed on an existing patent. Once the company gets large enough and visible enough, the patent holder or a troll comes after that company because now there's money to be made. Have you had anyone do an assessment, either yourself or a third party, as to whether the proprietary image analysis approach that you use possibly infringes on other existing patents?
No, to be honest, we don't do that, because the image matching algorithm, we constantly work on that. So it's constantly changing, improving, and yeah, so we would actually have to check it every month against all the possible patterns.
Mm-hmm. So Susan online, she's asking, can we customize your service such that you are searching daily or more frequently than 2 weeks, as mentioned? Can you discuss successes or failures on claims made in China?
Okay, so the first answer is yes, we can, of course, change that. We can also search every day. We do that actually for certain clients that need let's say, an even better service. When it comes to China, it's super difficult. So it's not a country where we are very successful. We researched a lot, we met a lot of people, but the special situation in China is that if you want to go after a copyright infringement, first of all, you have to do it separately in every province. So it means you would need lawyers in every province. And if you want to do it, they have a super complicated way of registering the copyright. So it can only be in a certain time frame before the first publishing, then you need a notary to notarize it, and so on. So it's like impossible.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think Scott asked, he says, fascinating, Marcus, can you please share your slides with your email again, please? So in any way, if you're willing to share your slides, you can send them to us and we can redistribute them. And if you could share your email address so people could reach out to you with more questions, that would be great. Oh, that's on that slide.
Marcus Schmidt.
Again, just
okay.
that
Oh, now I
we
got it. To share the slides with the email address. Now I get it. Okay.
Post the recording that has the slides.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Stephen. Yeah.
So great presentation. I really enjoyed it. It seems that the professional photography angle, that specific use case, it's a little bit more passive monitoring where someone might put it up on the website or try to sell a point something that's not really theirs. Have you tried to do it with like real-time monitoring of, let's say, like a sports game, or sometimes there's certain channels on like YouTube or Reddit that continuously stream copyrighted content such as like HBO? Does your accuracy drop if you try to do real-time as compared to like, static site, like let's say Etsy, for instance, someone selling Starry Night on a bag or something when they don't have the copyright to do so?
Well, I mean, streamed content like video, I can only assume. I would have to ask our tech people, but the data volume would be and the processing power would be much too big. One thing, what we also ask whether we can handle videos, like if you have a video library to. What we could do actually is every video has so-called reference images stored. We could check against those reference images. So we would at least probably find the video which contains that, but streaming, no.
Thank you.
All right. Any final questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, in the beginning, two gentlemen said, one to the left and one to the right, that they are in the area of funding, and actually CopyTrack is right now in a growth funding round. So we are talking to investors, and of course I would be more than happy if there is interest of these two gentlemen to talk to them.
Great, that would be Lance and Charles here. So hopefully you guys can connect.
Yeah,
so
sure.
That would be good. Great. So we would like to take a 10% commission for facilitating the transaction. So.
I'll help you with your immigration form.
There you go. Well, that's how community works. So that's great. Well, thank you so much, Mark. It's been great. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your presentation too, Amelie. And Susan, are we meeting again next week?
So next week it doesn't look like we'll be meeting, but the following week we'll have our very own Julian Yarko from our law school faculty presenting. An email just went out to the group about that, so check your inbox if you're signed up for our email list, which I hope you are. That is February 4th, and we'll be recording that one and making it available remotely as well. So please register if you'd like to have that information on the remote access for Zoom for that. And then the following week, February 13th, it does look like we will be having another CodeX group meeting. So please join us for that. And I would just like to let everybody know that we are very, very close to opening up our registration for Future Law, which is Thursday, April 9th. And so check www.codexfuturelaw.com, and an email will be going out about that. So hope to see everybody there as well.
Great, Susan. Thank you. Yeah, stay tuned for next week. We may have some last-minute sign up. So if you get an email from us on Tuesday, we may still have a session next Thursday. But otherwise we'll see you on February 4th for the event with Julian Yarko. All right, thank you all. See you soon. Thanks.